afternoon. It's great to be back on the stage once again. I generally love to moderate the session post-lunch. The reason is simple. People, delegates, visitors struggle hard to reach in the morning for the first session, missing the metros, trains, cabs, Ubers, and most of the times they do not manage to have their breakfast, miss on everything, just to attend and try to be on a time. But lunch is something amazing, right? You can just sit back, relax, and listen to us. So I think because the stomach is full. So that's why I love moderating session post-lunch, because I think that people will pay more attention to us. Again, my voice is sadly, it's a sore throat. But interestingly, Sairam said, don't tell anyone, tell that it's a bass voice. So, interesting. So, as we have been discussing various layers of GCC since morning, here we are going to focus more on the India as a demography and how the GCCs can scale up and strengthen, the socio-fabric part of the India's economy. What I will do is I will take, three questions to, one question to three of you, and then second question to three of you, so that we can get more perspective, and then one specific questions. So the first question is, with millions of jobs being created, GCCs are driving significant opportunities for India, but how are they truly uplifting the socio-economic fabric of the country? Raghavendra, I will start with you.
Yeah, thanks. So let's, before I get to what it is doing to India, let's look at what it is doing to our talent. Because most, if not all GCCs are about engineers, about talent, about IT, and about delivering work for global companies. The growth of GCCs, both by numbers and by stature, has, if I were to put it in one sentence, it has increased the engineering quotient of our engineering talent. And why do I say this? And I'm staying a little specific to engineering here. See, the engineers in GCCs, most of them work to deliver global products. The products that are not even there in India. Take my own company's example. Most of the 3,000 engineers I have, they work on trucks and buses that are sold in the West. Those are much more advanced, much more complex, much more cutting edge compared to the trucks and buses we have here. So the ability or the opportunity to do that only exists because a company like Daimler Truck decided to open an engineering center here. So these engineers pick up skills and tradecraft and ability to develop products which are at the bleeding edge of the technology. Now that's the opportunity that most, if not all of the GCCs provide to our engineers. Now the question is, they're doing a fabulous job of creating these products for the globe. Now what does it do to India? That's the question. Now here's one thing. It increases the engineering quotient of our engineers because they're working on much more complex products. But what I would really hope is that they take this tradecraft, they take this knowledge and make the Indian ecosystem better, right? As much as we hate to see loose people going out of our companies, the ones they go out, I'm hoping that some of them become entrepreneurs who create startups which will drive the technology for India. And they have a head start because they have already seen what's possible at the bleeding edge of the technology. Is it happening? I think in pockets, very, very small. But I think this is one of the things that we should see in the future, where the talent that is acquired by doing what we do for the rest of the world should make India a better place, should deliver better products for India, and should create technologies in the startup ecosystem which will drive the future.
Certainly.
Very well said about the engineering quotient. So before I start, firstly, thanks for inviting me to this panel. I'd also like to compliment all the people who support industry track, because what's technology without industry, right? So thanks for being with us. Go for it, yes. So I represent a company called Sandoz, which is into generics and biosimilars. So what we typically do for our living is, you've heard Mohit from Bristol Myers Squibb. So they develop innovative compounds, and once they lose their patent, then we come in to make it much cheaper. So we drive access of medicines to patients. So that's what Sandoz does. Now, coming to your question, I think about, it's a very complex question, right? Because I checked the definition of socio-economic fabric, and I got like 3 pages, yeah? So I don't know about the socio-economic fabric, but it's definitely increased the rental costs of accommodation in various cities because the GCCs are booming, yeah? But jokes aside, I'm going to stick to the talent dimension that Raghavendra just mentioned, just to give a perspective how GCC pharma GCCs are contributing to the socio-economic fabric. India generates about 120,000 pharmacy graduates every year. Yeah. Now, conventionally, 30 to 40% of them join hospitals and healthcare sector. Yeah. Another 20 to 25 join the pharmaceutical sector, and traditionally, pharmaceutical sector was all about sales and marketing, manufacturing, or R&D labs. Yeah. Now, very soon, this equation may change because GCC Pharma has actually increased the employability of all pharmacy graduates who are passing out every year. So very soon, I'm sure today, if you look at the statistics, this was 2023. Today, if you look at the stats, I'm sure GCC Life Sciences would probably be the largest employers for all the pharmacy graduates passing out of the country. So I think that's one small step towards driving and scaling up employability. And with the number of GCCs coming up in Hyderabad alone, in a 4-kilometer radius, we have 10 pharma GCCs. And I know people in Sandoz acknowledge that. While it's a threat, I also see it as an opportunity. And it definitely drives the micro ecosystem for our vendor partners and agencies that work with us.
Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to understand, I belongs to a technology company called QNX. I don't know how many you know QNX. Most likely, no? Okay. Does anyone knows ADAS, digital cockpit, software-defined vehicles? Okay. So please go back and check. QNX is the foundational real-time operating system behind most of the cars in the world. Okay. As we were talking with the Daimler, of course, we work closely with the Daimler trucks and stuff to make all this futuristic software-defined embedded systems powered through our products. We have been very new to the India. It is a Canadian company, okay, with the Atos bond in 1981. Okay, so it's not by no means a very new OS, it's very, very old OS. In terms of the socio-economic fabric, we are just 2-year-old GCC in India. The reason we came to India is about talent. There was no implications about the cost. There was no talks about, oh, we will do a low-value work and all of it. That is all gone. It's about talent, and it's about creating a meaningful quality work out of here to solve the problems for our customers globally. So it's all about generating money by ourselves. It's all about self-sufficiency. It's also about self-sustainable. And it's about uplifting in a way for country where the maximum IT talent exists in the world. And I think that's where we are trying to play our part. As when we come into this ecosystem, we realize that we have only 25,000 QNX talent in India, while the industry demand is probably hundreds and thousands. So what we did with the local partner here, and which is SpySquare, is recently is we took on ourselves to go to all the colleges in India and launch a program called as a QNX Everywhere, in collaboration with academia and universities, to make it as a grassroots skills for future of software embedded systems. So I'm very proud being the very, in the nascent stage, we took on ourselves to train probably in next 5 years, more than 100,000 engineers who comes out. And it's not only us who needs these skills. I think Daimler needs it, all the automotive OEMs, all the silicons of the big silicons you know potentially, all the tier ones, Bosch, Hermans of the world, everyone needs these skills. And it's a skill which is very niche, and it's very going to be very demand for safety and security aspects of building your application. So I think that's where we are looking forward to contributing to the socio-economic fabric. Also from a perspective of producing the new products and exporting those products and services in a way to contribute to the GDP.
Sure. I think ideally the team was thinking of putting you in that side, but great that you are here at this side. The technology sessions are going on that side. Let me change the gears now, and apart from this question, now I have a simple question for three of you. And Nanda, I will start with you. This question is for three of you. In your view, how are GCCs contributing to India's growth story? And what role do they play in shaping up the India's economic, future?
Okay, I think that's a terrific question. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I represent Carrier, Carrier Technologies, and our GCC is based out of Hyderabad. But we are not new to India in Carrier. So we have had our factory in Gurgaon since 1987, and we make air conditioning both for residential and primarily mostly for the commercial side. So since you asked about the India impact, I'm going to talk a little bit closer to home. And if you take a look at products, just look at India as a country. When you are localizing more products, when you're bringing in more, it is not just about doing the work that you have within GCCs, but how do you really drive, the entire ecosystem. GCCs nowadays are generating their own energy. As we continue to produce more and more goods out of India, you require factories, you require suppliers, you require materials, you require processes. And it's not only with suppliers, but you also need to collaborate better with academia, with industry. I think this entire ecosystem, is rebooting and developing. We are lucky, in the sense that we have a GCC, but we also have a local center. So how do you collaborate both global and local? And how do you drive value from all of it? In GCC, we have a lot of talent. But for example, unless you take that talent and give them that domain knowledge, it is very difficult for them to really make a lasting impact. GCCs have engineers, but what about marketing? What about product management? What about service? Who touches our product? So to make the GCCs more effective, our engineers need to be in the field and understand. And I think that area is going to become very important. The more we do it, I think the more the local ecosystem will grow. Take a look at Hyderabad, for example. For many people who try to get hotels here nowadays, most hotels are full. There is economic rub-off, there is real estate work, there is services. I think GCCs are bringing a lot of other, and even if you don't have a manufacturing presence here, you still work with local laboratories, for you to get your work done. So I think the entire ecosystem is growing, frankly. And it also got mentioned in our budget, right? So GCC is a growing word, buzzword, but I think also generating its own energy.
Sure. Alok?
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I work for ICICI Bank. We have a unique vantage point of actually seeing money in motion. So while everybody else may have some estimates, most of GCCs bank with us in some shape, form or the other. We fortunately see this going up every day. If I have to put some numbers, depending on how you choose to define a GCC, this number, it's about $100 billion plus flowing into the country today. Where it goes, 70% of the money is towards employee costs. So $70 billion gets into the pockets of individuals, salaried individuals from varying sections of society, leads to a lot of draw to GCC centers like Hyderabad. So there's migration, there is urbanization, there is development, and further down this gate, money gets spent, and again, creates an economy around it. So it's a substantial volume of money. While it is developed on its own, to be fair to on merit, GCCs do bring, they are value organizations. They used to be cost organizations. Now they are value organizations. We've always had the talent. We have the capacity to produce talent. We are a populous country. We have a core value system is defined in such a way there is a section of society strives hard, educates itself. We bring a great value proposition to the table. All these have economic impacts. Like, I'm personally excited to be here. I'm a mechanical engineer. 30 years ago when I passed out, I understand a little bit of what they do. It's very exciting for me. But I became a banker. While that's a story for another day, it also tells us something about how our economy is moved. There was 30 years ago, financial services was somewhat muted in this country. There was manufacturing, there was agriculture. Today, services is the big part of the economy, right? And growing. Likewise, if you look at GCCs, earlier we were confined to IT services. Being a low-income category country, we were happy making a small margin and not investing enough in the future for innovation. Courtesy GCCs, the talent pool that is developing on high tech, for instance, the kind of work they do. I'm familiar with some of the work they do. Google Maps, a lot of work, I don't know how many of you are aware, was done in India, right? Somebody took a bet back then on Google Maps and said that this will be a world-class product and a world-beating one and will find use cases by itself. And it has, right? While developing it is very tough to articulate. But only somebody who's willing to put down capital and invest in it can do that. And that leads to economic changes back here at places where these people are employed. Short and long of it is that there's a great potential for GCCs to impact the country's economy. I hope we handle it well. This is like a one-time opportunity like China had with manufacturing. We have with GCCs, and I hope we are able to make the most of it.
Sure. Thanks for adding that. Actually, when you're talking, I was very tempted to ask you कि RBI ने repo rate कम किया है, ICICI Bank home loan का rate कम करने वाला है. You being a banker, but that story for another day maybe. Yeah. Somu.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Actually, just to introduce myself, I will just take 30 seconds of introduction of myself and InfyStrat. So, although I'm a South Indian, I moved to South Africa 20 years ago. So, I founded InfyStrat from South Africa as a IT strategic partner for many of the businesses, which is into system integration and also on the solution side. So then we expanded it to globally, and also India is becoming our major center in Bangalore and Hyderabad. So then we entered into the GCC customer base and support. So this is a very high level introduction, and coming to adding value to the social economic growth. So I would like to mention actually three major points. One is building the ecosystem. Ecosystem may not be on the only technology side. It should be on the technology or compliance, regulatory, as well as real estate. So when we are building GCC, all these factors impacts a lot, and also it support our Indian businesses in the other aspect and other regions outside technology. So the second aspect is also the talent pool we are talking about. So certainly, the mega cities, metro cities has got a lot of talents. At the same time, also we can notice on the tier 2, tier 3 cities. As you see, there are also a lot of engineering colleges, other colleges are there where there are talents who may not come out of the city, but also there are pools available, which will also in terms of cost, it will certainly impact GCCs, and also it's a good growth for economy adding value as well. Like let's say now if you take tier 1 like Bangalore, Hyderabad and all, tier 2s are also there like Vizag and Mysore, just an example in this side. So we must look at that aspect as well. The third point I would like to mention is on the sectorial growth. So we are working on building the talents for mostly on the technology part. Why don't we support the GCCs on the business part? So we must look at that aspect as well, so that we have so much of talent, and we should be able to support the GCCs coming, and also it will be a great value to our economy. Thank you.
Okay, I have quick questions because the time is slightly limited. I will go back one by one, Raghavendra, starting with you. I think all of you shared your thoughts specifically and the perspectives on how the GCCs are adding value to the social fabric of India, or how they're helping in India building up. Tell me, what are the major pain points that you faced or GCCs are facing specifically while setting up shop in India? And if there are any solutions that you see, let's be as specific as you can.
Well, I think the biggest problem the GCCs face, and it's also a little bit geographically dependent, but I can speak for when you build a GCC for a Central European automotive manufacturing company, which has 125 years of history in Germany, you have to prove yourself every single day. And that too, when you're working with German engineers, I mean, German engineering is very famous. It is the best in the world, and there is a reason behind that. So every single day you have to prove yourself, right? And then the progress happens only step by step. You start with the component design, you go to module, and you get to systems, but it's a very painful journey. So the growth from the outside looks great, but inside you have to prove every single day. That is one. And second is how do you scale, and how do you go from cost arbitrage to scaling to value? And we're in this journey of going from scaling to value, and that's not an easy journey to cross. So every day you have to be a better engineer, proving yourself to your headquarters, and that's a very real challenge on the ground.
That was interesting. I have also heard that when the top bosses from GCCs come to India, they find Indian food very spicy. Is that a big challenge?
Yes, but they're also getting used to the Indian spices. Some of them like the spicy. I mean, I have my board members coming in next week, but they come here for the Indian spice as well.
Interesting. Sairam, R&D has been a challenge all the time in India, and there is a lot of focus that the government and everyone is trying to put on. In fact, every budget will have at least one line on the R&D part. So what kinds of value that the GCCs are putting in specifically R&D space?
Okay. So I'd like to qualify that question, because R&D in pharma is very different from the engineering R&D space, right? Because that's a much bigger landscape, because I've heard that all the Vipers of aircrafts are designed, developed, and sold from India. So that's, I think, a phenomenal thing. Pharma will be aspiring to do that. Now, when you say R&D, let's split those two, right? So there's research and development. A lot of what pharma GCCs do in India is the development piece, which means starting from writing your dossiers to regulatory submissions, running clinical trials, phase 1 through phase 4. A lot of that work is already happening. Where we have an opportunity definitely is on the research piece, yeah? The drug discovery piece, which still sits in Cambridge, Boston, and some of the European centers. And I think that's where an opportunity is. Now, there's a reason why that's not coming here. I think despite the fact that we have a strong academic throughput, I don't think the exposure for deep research, especially in the life sciences sector, is adequate enough. And that should come when we have more exposure in the academia for advanced research in the life sciences space. And I think that's something we should collectively work, and provided we all work with each other in that sense. But I'm sure there is an intent to do that, so that we complete the R&D equation. Right now, it's only development.
Raj, what is your maybe one goal behind entering in India? Because fortunately, for whatever reasons, India has been very good into IT side, right? We have top companies offering greater service specifically into IT. Obviously, hardware side, we are still lacking. But when you enter in India, you're relatively new, I can understand that. What was your logic and what is your aim?
Okay, so we entered into India for two reasons. We wanted to create our second core R&D site from all the other perspective. And there was no better place than India, for sure. And we were very mindful when we entered India is that this is not going to be just shifting the work. We are going to work on new product and services from day one. But as my esteemed colleague said, it's also a Herculean challenge for us to prove ourselves every day, okay? Because first initial years are very tough, very, very tough, because it's not about just moving the work and the bodies and having the engineers here. While India has a very highly skilled engineers, but you have to earn your reputation and credibility by showing your work, right? That becomes very tough in the first few years for you to prove. The second piece for us was also a bit of generational challenge, right? India is very young, ambitious, risk-taking, and there were parts of the world where, fortunately, being a 40-year-old company, we have people who have been in this company for 30 years, 20 years, 40 years kind of a stuff. So how you really have that frequency matching, I say, between the two generations in terms of how we really operate in India versus how they really look to us to become a more matured, independent, self-sufficient, and self-sustainable GCC. So I think we are on that evolution and I would say journey. We are very early in our stages. And of course, then there's always this question about attrition in India. Okay. And that has been a challenge for us because for our headquarters, the attrition has never ever been there. Like the people are so passionate about working in kernel and low-level programming that they have never thought of moving out of this domain for decades. And India has a very different landscape to deal with it. So that's a one. The second piece, just to quickly conclude, is what we found is it's not just us who need the QNX talent on the low-level embedded side. Actually, we work with every automotive OEMs in the world, every medical OEMs in the world. Everyone is looking for this talent, and I think there's no better place than India to skill and get that specialized talent for the future embedded engineering or embedded systems. So, and that's why we put a lot of effort to work with all the universities in the upcoming years to develop that skills from the grassroots level. Not only to fulfill our demands, but to fulfill the ecosystem demands.
Sure.
Thank you.
Welcome, and all the best. Thank you. Nanda, I have a very important question to you, actually. I mean, obviously, the macro dynamics, macroeconomics of India are quite positive, and every investor would like to hit on the India. That's what the story that we hear. But if you look at the data, FDI is very low. Actual companies are not coming. Market में आ रहे हैं सब लोग पैसा बनाने के लिए. That's a different part. What is the major reason for the JCCs or the top foreign companies to come to India? Are they finding India as a very cheap market and they think that they can do the things here in $1 for which they will spend $20 there? Because when you look at even the startups data, the story is quite mesmerizing that, oh, we have 100,000 startups. But the reality is the investor thinks that if I have to fund a startup in maybe USA, he needs to put in at least $10 million. But in $10 million, he can bet on 10 startups, right? So I'm sorry, the question is too long, but the simple thought is, are GCCs going to create a long-term value for India, or it's just an investor's game?
No, I think I agree. I think it's a very important question. And while in the past people may have come here for cost, I frankly don't really see a lot of discussion around cost nowadays. I think they are really coming here because the quality of the talent and the availability of the talent is far higher than the cost arbitrage that we will get. Frankly, if you take a look at it, they might be, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think there's about 5,000 odd global roles for GCCs out of India. And I think this number is set to quadruple in the next 3 or 4 years, right? The question is, do we have the amount of talent to really play at that global level? If you look at, and I'm not talking about the IT space, if you look at the engineering space, we are a fraction of what the world spends on engineering R&D. So for us to kind of take our rightful share of that spend and bring it in here requires a far larger ecosystem. And the thing that differentiates us, on the talent side is a lot of times, people come and say, hey, look, this is not possible. Because when we try to localize product into India, and frankly, I think our engineers have always stepped in and said, I don't know if that is not possible. I think you mean it's just not been done yet. And I think time after time after time, we have figured out a way to kind of break that constraint and make things that were not possible. Because, we are a country on the march. Take air conditioning. Only 8% of India actually has access to air conditioning. If we don't do this in a mature, sustainable way, it'll just put so much load. So I think GCCs can do a lot of work, in many spaces.
Sure, that was a relevant one. So, Alok, you partly mentioned the bank side earlier and GCC. But if I ask you specifically, since you're heading the GCC part of ICICI Bank, what role the bank like yours or specifically the private banks will play with GCCs going ahead in India?
Yeah, so anytime there is an economic activity, a bank is required, or banking is required. And sometimes, banks are ready for it. Sometimes we get ready in due course in the process of it. Since we've recognized this opportunity as a bank, and some of our competitors too, we have to curate our products and services which are better suited for this market. And what do I mean by saying that? So let's divide this world into two parts: corporate banking, which is basically banking solutions for the corporate. Mostly lending is not required, which is the core corporate banking product in Indian market. But we have Forex transactions. We'll also have unique situations. For instance, a GCC is set up 3 months ago by a very prominent global Fortune 100 company. But the GCC, the subsidiary, is very new. Now, if you apply for, let's say, even a corporate credit card, what will happen is we need 3 years of your financial history to issue you a card. That's a typical standard way of doing it. We have kind of looked at it very differently, and we've said, look, if you have the parentage, which is credible, based on the credibility of the parentage, we will take a small position on you, and we'll extend that credit to you. So these are things that have come anew in the banking sector. Definitely we do it. On the employee side, the employee actually works with different timings, is very tech savvy, so we have to actually bring the bank to the employee. He is not likely to come to the branch. We do it through technology platforms. In some cases, where regulation requires physical interaction, we have put in branches. If you go around Hyderabad and Bangalore, you'll find it very, very close to GCC centers, right? So we brought the bank to the customer. Then even our products and services for the employee banking is curated to cater to that profile. Like for instance, there are remittance products. For instance, there are expat banking. All that we do. So what we've done is essentially curated our products and services and structure and technology platform to align it to the requirement of this segment.
That is relevant one and good one. Somu, last and very important question to you again is, sorry, what kind of next generation technologies that GCCs can bring in India, which will be highly efficient and meaningful, relevant for India?
Absolutely. Actually, if you look at the niche areas where we are looking at is on the Gen AI, neural networks, and also neural linguistic programming. So these are coming up widely and high demand. So I'm sure India is also collaborating with academic partners and building the talents and also creating the volume out of it. So besides cost, quality, and transformation, also we the great thing is India looking at value based and also working with partners like NASCOM, FICCI, and GCC ecosystems, which will also certainly bring great value in terms of technology. So yeah, so that's in a nutshell on a technology part. Means definitely as our panelist colleagues mentioned, like also we must look at the sector based, which will sector-based solutions, I would say, on the technology part. And then also one more important aspect is the OEMs. So if you look at Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, Salesforce, for an example, Salesforce has Agent AI, which is also came up very coming up very aggressively. Those are the technologies will certainly had great value to our ecosystem.
Sure, thanks for adding that. I wish I could have taken more questions, but the time is up. The watch is already stopped here. Thank you so much for sharing those meaningful thoughts here and being part of this conversation. Friends, I have been learning a lot specifically on GCC since morning, and otherwise I was reading reports, but it's a great experience and great to see the positivity from leaders like this, specifically on the GCC front. And thank you so much for your participation and being part of ET GCC event. Thank you so much.